Kia ora. This presentation is about a project that we started in 2020 called the Engagement Incubator. This research was undertaken with and is supported by Te Pūnaha Matatini, a Centre of Research Excellence for Complex Systems in Aotearoa, New Zealand. Our presentation shares this case study of embedding engagement within a scientific research organisation. My name's Rhian Salmon, and I'm an Associate Professor and Co-Founder of the Centre for Science and Society at Te Herenga Waka, Victoria University of Wellington. I have a background as an atmospheric chemist, a polar and climate science communicator, and a public engagement researcher. I'm particularly interested in exploring the relationship between public engagement theory and practice.
And I'm Jo Bailey, a Senior Lecturer in Design at Toiora-Wharangi Massey University College of Creative Arts in Wellington. I'm also a PhD student with Rhian, looking at using design as a way to help scientist communicators improve the calibre of their public engagement. We are also both principal investigators within Te Pūnaha Matatini, and we were also joined in this research project by Professor Maya Horst, who joined us in New Zealand from Denmark as a visiting researcher back in the day when international travel was a thing.
The Engagement Incubator was a 2-day, 2-night residential retreat during which a group of scientists and researchers who wanted to engage with the public about their work came together to consider what engagement could be and workshop their projects. This built on previous work we had done together, including workshops, work with the Te Pūnaha Matatini Engagement Committee, and a series of engagement laundromats.
At the incubator, there were 14 participants who were focused on 9 research projects. The participants were at a variety of career stages, from PhD students to full professors. Topics included things like freshwater science, mathematics, indigenous ecological restoration, and chronic disease prevention. The commonality was that everybody was part of Te Pūnaha Matatini. TPM have always been committed to challenging the dominant research culture, placing equity, diversity, and inclusion centrally within their ethos. Engagement has been a part of this, but has largely been reactive. Part of our research has been to explore what engagement means both to individual researchers and also as an organisation. So the incubator is a practical experiment in bringing engagement more centrally so it can become upstream as well as downstream. Part of Te Pūnaha Matatini demonstrating their commitment to engagement was covering all the costs for the participants.
This diagram and the associated bibliography are online, and it demonstrates that the Engagement Incubator builds on several practice-informed theory publications as well as theory-informed practical projects that we've been involved in.
One of those was the Load Off Your Mind Reflexive Public Engagement Laundromat. In short, it was an installation designed to be a kind of third space that draws on metaphors of laundry, rinsing, airing, hanging out, pressing on, and uses design prompts written on garment-shaped paper to elicit reflexive thoughts about research and to encourage dialogue. We used it at 3 conferences, once with scientists, where we aired the dirty laundry of science, once with science and technology studies scholars, and once with designers in a gallery context. And this format became the canvas for the Engagement Incubator.
The incubator comes from a place of thinking about some of the things public engagement theory points to: reflexivity, the value of engaging with different publics, using dialogical and co-production approaches, and innovating, evaluating, and in a design sense, iterating, and wondering if actually we should do all these things with the theory too, in order to activate it as an embedded practice. So we designed an engagement about engagement, and we're writing up the findings to feed back into the theory too.
In essence, it's a process that's both informed by public engagement theory and embeds the practice of doing it. At this point, I'll touch briefly on what design is in this context, as it's a really broad term. This diagram shows a spectrum of design approaches from the explanatory to the speculative, and I'm used to operating generally at the explanatory end as a visual communication designer, but we've been blurring the boundaries by using approaches from across the spectrum within this research project. A huge part of the design is the tactile material manifestation. After the incubator, Maya pondered, what's the difference between having a dialogue where we only use words and then doing something where we use the materiality as well? What changes when we do something with our hands? We leave traces in the real world. Making an experience that invites both dialogue, but also the means to think through making traces is really important. Each group has their own washing machine, and activities are framed around those machines with thoughts collected on them at each step.
Touching briefly on what the participants did with their time, We leaned on some of what we had learned from the laundromats in terms of employing metaphors of doing washing to suggest a process. This might seem kind of silly, but actually we learnt that there's something powerful in metaphors in terms of keeping things light and playful. Also, washing clothes in a laundromat is a very private thing in a public space, which fits with the kind of collective reflexivity we were hoping to share in the incubator. This process was something that the participants really valued. One participant said, "The process allowed me to break down the whole project and actually refocus on the why and the who, and it was manageable as well. It was staged, which allowed me to be present." Another said, "I liked how the washing machines make you feel like you're part of a process. It didn't feel ad hoc, it felt well thought out, so you feel like you can just trust the process."
We haven't got time to go into all the steps and how these manifested as the toolkit of exercises, but at a glance, step 2, where we sort the laundry, includes a Psychon 101, so we can talk about the various understandings of things like terminology, which, though it was one way, does generate really good conversations and is an opportunity for us to share knowledge. In step 3, choosing the settings, we adjust the levers about the stages at which they're doing their engagement, how much they're open to having the engagement change the research direction, and how controversial their topic might be with the publics. This generates good conversations about the interplay between these things. At stage 5, we consider audiences and messages, and at stage 7, we undertake a prioritisation exercise.
One of the key steps drew on a paper by myself and Heidi Roop, which provided a framework for our participants to interrogate and unpack engagement according to power structures, drivers, and people that are involved behind the scenes.
It's also worth noting that we had a colleague who wasn't able to join us in person, but was really keen to incubate a particular project that she and her PhD students were working on. However, by that point, COVID had really kicked off and we found ourselves in a pandemic world, so we reconceptualised the engagement incubator to run remotely. Since the physicality of the experience was so central, I redesigned the materials into a zine and a pizza box of props that we posted up to her, and then she and her team worked through the steps independently, punctuated by a series of Zoom sessions with us to help them reflect.
The rest of this presentation will focus on the participant experience and our insights. Prior to joining the incubator, all of the participants had opted in to participate in our research, which wasn't mandatory, and meant that we could record and analyse discussions throughout the engagement incubator and during post-event interviews. The data we're about to present draws on these conversations, as well as subsequent discussions between the three of us and unsolicited feedback.
A common thread in the feedback was how valuable going through this experience as a group was, that having a process to work on your own project but get feedback to air your thoughts gave people confidence and it gave them clarity. I'll read a couple of feedback comments that sum this up. Putting the space and time aside has been really important. I feel like I came with a really specific, yep, this is what I want to do, but that feedback from everybody has really helped to distill it. Another participant commented, I got a lot out of the fact that it wasn't just me and a washing machine. It was a laundromat with other people that you can interact with. The generosity of spirit with which everyone was sharing their experiences was so great. Another summed this up as, now I feel I have the license to just go ahead and do the bloody thing.
All the steps are grounded in an attempt to trigger or stimulate some reflexivity in the participants, and there's some feedback that suggests this has been the case. One person said, the process has been permission-giving and affirming and really brought to the fore some of my own assumptions. Another said, I think that I wouldn't have seen some of my blind spots if it wasn't for the group and for the guidance of experienced people.
The metaphor of the laundromat was a useful way to talk about the process of the engagement incubator for the participants. What was unexpected, however, was how useful the metaphor would become for us in thinking about engagement theory, especially the way the reproductive and repetitive nature of laundry and the elements of care that it suggests is equally pertinent for engagement. This isn't something you do once and then tick off. Engagement, like laundry, is ongoing. As Maya pointed out, we have to keep washing our clothes, not because we think they'll never get dirty again. Our clothes, like our engagement, need to be washed to refresh them. This mirrors reflexivity as a way to recapture practice experiences and mull them over critically in order to gain new understandings and so improve future practice as part of the process of lifelong learning.
We discovered that the reflexivity work was happening on a number of levels. The participants were encouraged to think reflexively about their engagement work and how that work exists across an entire scientific research project, not just at the end. As members of a shared research community and culture, Te Punaha Matatini, the incubator also provided participants with an opportunity to consider what it looks like to walk the talk with regards to prioritising engagement. Finally, the experience provided the three of us an opportunity to interrogate public engagement theory in a very practical context.
We hope Te Punaha Matatini's ongoing commitment to running these incubators will help us as an organisation and as individuals to keep going round and round again with reflecting on the why and the how of engagement practice.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.